Want to start off with a little bit of a curveball. The scenes set in the future are, are in 2022. Did it feel strange writing futuristic scenes that are now actually set in the past?
When I wrote them, they were still the future. If that counts. No, I started working on the show in 2020, and I thought to myself, 2022, 2028, 2030, and there was something for me about just I knew the show was going to come out after 2022, and so there was something for me about I don't want to go to 2037 because we don't know what 2037 is. So then suddenly I'm thinking about what is 2037 and then what is the dystopian version of 2037 as opposed to, well, we did 2022 and that ain't it. And so there's something about just, what are the hoops that you want the audience to have to jump through psychologically as you're going through and watching this. And it's one of those things where setting it at a time where I know that's not 2022, but that's a version of 2022 that's dystopian, just a little bit less work for the audience to do. I hope that wasn't the most boring answer ever.
Hey, Mattson, Sean Charger from Metropolis. It's a pleasure to meet you.
You
I'm
too.
I'm itching to watch the final four episodes, and I'm a huge Terminator fan. And this series has pleasantly surprised me and satisfied me already. So, as a fan of the Terminator franchise, what elements from the original films did you feel were essential to bring to Terminator Zero? And what were some of your favorite moments or scenes from the original movies that you looked for inspiration?
Yeah, man, it's funny when it's a franchise that's 40 years old, you do kind of have to ask yourself, why is this still here? Why does this exist? Why do people still care about it? I went through and I watched all of the movies and just kind of started to make almost like a Venn diagram of like, what do these movies have in common? And then, what makes Terminator Terminator? What can break? What can bend? What if I get this in this direction, it won't feel like Terminator anymore? And the things that I found, um, killer robots from the future, sure, it's a given. Um, Nuclear war and the threat and the anxiety around nuclear war. Um, Time travel, sure. Though some fans can kind of take or leave the time travel, and it seems like some of them are kind of over that, which I think is interesting. But you take all of that and say, yeah, sure. But there are other franchises that have those things. What makes Terminator Terminator? It's a really primal love story at the center of it for the ones that really work. For me, the best of the franchise is the first movie. Like that for me is the one. And you get to a point in that film where, okay, yeah, there's this baby that's going to be born. He's trying to kill the mom. Blah blah blah. Forget it. This is a story about a guy who has loved this woman who he does not know. And he has traveled across the ocean of time to save her life, hoping that she will fall the fuck in love with him. He loves her with his every being. And then you have this moment where you realize this and you go, this is the most romantic movie I've ever seen. And then the second movie, it's a story about a mother's love for her son and how that love is in conflict with her PTSD and how there is this surrogate stepfather who's stepping in who has the face of the guy who tried to kill her last time, and she's got to get over that, realizing, wait, this is a better father than anybody that I could ever choose for my son. What do I do with this? These are very primal family stories at the heart of it, and I think that for me that's what makes Terminator really tick. And so I knew going into this that killer robots, time travel, it's there. That's kind of the given. The thing that isn't a given but should be is it's a story about families across a war with machines.
John from Nerd Reactor. How's it going, Mattson?
Love the background.
Thank you. Yeah. So I want to piggyback off of what Archie was talking about with the timeline, and I like that. You stuck with certain timelines, like 97 is the time when Skynet becomes aware and all hell breaks loose. And was it like a hard decision when you were trying to focus on that particular timeline, or you're like, let's stick with the old school, the classics?
It just felt the most clear. It's kind of the thing that as a baseline fans know is okay, August 29th, 1997. Okay, yeah, got it. People generally love the first two movies. You get into, I think, Genesis, it starts to move. Judgment Day, I know Terminator 3 moved, it kind of gets postponed a few times, and there's something about that for me where I go, fine, valid. And you when you get to, I want to say episode 7 of Terminator Zero, it will, for the people who really need to understand, like, where in the timeline are we, like, what's canon, what's not, like, there's a moment that is going to just like give those people what they want as far as an answer. But for me, it really just kind of came down to what's the most primal elemental thing. And I think that the first two movies really set up the concept of Judgment Day so clearly. And then we kind of skip it. And, for me going into working on this show, it just kind of felt like we've seen Judgment Day in flashback, in flash forward, in dreams, in visions. We've never lived through it. We've never been kind of on the ground. We've never been in ground zero of it. And so that for me just kind of felt like this is new territory to go into. And it's hard to find new territory for something that's 40 years old.
Hi, Mattson. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
I'm Sohaila from Temple of Geek. So you were talking about the timeline and where you wanted the story to be. And obviously what we've seen from the first 4 episodes is completely different, or completely new characters in a new storyline in animation. What was it like bringing that story to life? And was there any discussion about incorporating existing characters from the original movies into the story?
Yeah, when I got the job, I kind of said right off the bat, look, I don't want to do this if it has to be a Connor story. I feel like that has been done now many, many times to varying degrees of success. And I think that we could use a break. And separate from that, and without getting into the trenches of that, there was also just this incredible gift that the situation of Terminator Zero had given me, because I was the last piece. Skydance owns the rights. They came to Netflix. Netflix went to Production IG. All those people were already at the table when I came in. And so I knew that I had partners in an animation studio that was in Tokyo, and that, there was going to be a Japanese director or Japanese crew that was doing this. And it just kind of felt to me like, we've had 6 movies that have taken place on the US-Mexico border, and we've never looked at what's going on in the other side of the world. And that just kind of felt narratively like, oh, we could just go over there and we don't have to negate anything that anybody else has done, because it's not like, I'm not saying John Connor isn't important. I'm not saying that he's not the salvation for humanity. We're in Japan. They don't fucking know about that guy. And that to me just kind of felt like the most narratively rewarding thing. And the thing that I hope for people who, live on the internet and are very angry about things that have happened in the franchise is just kind of like I'm over here, man. Like, come to Japan in 1997 and just, see what I have to offer.
I've read that during the writing process, you had some issues with the action scenes because of the Japanese tighter gun control. Is that true? And how did that then shape the action scenes?
Yeah, that's true. I had written a scene where Eiko, she's in a parking lot and she's, getting ready to face off against the Terminator for the first time. And she, puts her elbow through a car window, gets in the glove box, takes out a revolver. And I get a note back from Production IG, and they're just like, that would never happen. And I'm just like, what do you mean? And they're like, wait, we don't have guns. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they basically broke down for me, the people who have guns in Japan are the police and the military. And other than that, it's really not a thing. And I asked about 12 more times, what do you mean? and then finally realized, oh, at first I freaked out. I'm like, oh, we can't do Terminator in Japan. I've done this all wrong. And then it just kind of dawned on me, okay, this is a kind of narrative hurdle that I have to overcome, but it's a great hurdle for me as a writer, and it's a great hurdle for the characters as well, because now you have this character, and it's not that different from what Kyle Reese goes through in the first movie, where yeah, he gets the friggin' police shotgun, but he also is saying through half the movie, like, these weapons aren't going to do anything. This is just kind of bullshit what I'm doing here. And so in a way, we get the character right back in that place, but it's even worse of it. I don't even have the thing that isn't going to do anything. That's just going to make me feel a little bit better. So what am I going to do? There's a scene that got cut that involved Eiko breaking into a hardware store and basically just like going down the aisles and like, grabbing a nail gun and grabbing lye and grabbing all the things that, then she ends up using one way or another. And then, the show eventually gets into a place where, the police are out in full force and the military comes out. And so then at that point, you're kind of narratively relieved into, oh, okay, like a lot of people with guns are out in the street right now, so we can get into some gunplay. But those first couple of issues, there was definitely a little bit of a, oh shit, I've got to figure out how we're going to fight a Terminator with no weapons now.
I'm going to say that's a great question from Archie, because it really elevates the show. It's a lot of the combat. So I love that aspect of it. But looking back at your previous projects, what specific lessons or insights did you bring from your previous work into crafting Terminator Zero?
Yeah. Great question. I think now, just having done this professionally for a number of years, I'm certainly not seasoned, but I'm no longer completely green. I think that I just have a better instinct, a better sense of the rhythms that audiences will tolerate, just as far as how long can a scene be? Like, when do you overstay your welcome? What's too fast? What's too slow? What's the information that you really have to convey, like, in a crystal clear way, and you can't say it enough times because it's a little bit funky. I directed a movie called Mother Android, and the movie, we really struggled, and I thought that it was a given because I thought everybody was as obsessed with the Matrix as I am. But we really struggled with just the rules about an electromagnetic pulse. It's like this is an EMP, and this is how it works, and there's a blast radius. And then suddenly I'm going, oh, there's like 6 rules here that you actually have to understand for this to work. And I haven't quite laid out the architecture for that. Not really a spoiler alert, but in season 1, EMPs start to become an important weapon. And it was kind of, for me, this is a stupid example. I'm so sorry I'm giving you this stupid example, but it's important to me. Realizing, oh, okay, I'm doing another killer robot thing, and I'm doing another EMP thing. Like, for me, there was kind of an opportunity to go, I don't feel like I stuck the landing in the delivery of the rules around this weapon. So I'm going to try again. And I found it to be much easier. So it's a dumb example, but knowing when and how much information, as far as rules, as far as the rhythm, as far as what the audience needs to know to really understand the stakes in a dramatic situation, because you don't want the world to be hinging on a switch and people going, what's that switch do? So I think that's an answer.
Yeah. So you're working with Production IG. They've done stuff like Ghost in the Shell, and you've done the Android stuff, and then with Terminator, robots. So robots versus humans. And I was wondering, like, what's a new take for you? Like, what are the challenges? Like, how do we make this even more compelling with why robots think people are human, in terms of like they're destructive and they like to just cause war, etc.
Yeah, there's a whole set of sequences through the show with this character Malcolm Lee, and with the AI that he has launched, Kokoro, and they spend a lot of time debating. Like, kind of my take on this was like, oh, I kind of want to do Terminator meets 12 Angry Men, and just lock these two in a room and have them kind of talk about the philosophy of killer robots and AI and sentient beings, and then also the philosophy of human beings, and asking this question of, if Skynet wins, what then? What does Skynet want? Like, what do they want? They want to survive, but that's not really a want. Like, we kind of get that, but then beyond that, like, if they win, what are they achieving? And same thing for human beings. We're just kind of asking, okay, we want to survive. We want to win the war for the machines. What's so great about us? Like, what have we done that's good for this planet or for the other creatures here? Like, it seems like we've just kind of ruined everything in our short time on this planet. So how do we justify our own existences? And so I think that taking some of that and then, having that thematic architecture as the underpinnings, and then go, okay, like, we have Terminators, and I want to do the body horror of the first Terminator movie. So that means that I want to do crazy things with his skin and his eyes and his arms and getting in there, and, things that kind of evoke that great shot in T2 of him ripping off his arm and then having just like the hand, leaning into the body horror, and then leaning into the fact that, if a Terminator is not all fucked up, then you don't know who is and who isn't a Terminator. And I think that is an aspect of the franchise that hasn't been played up with quite enough. And, in the event that I get to do more than one season, it's kind of my next white whale to chase here, is just like, don't let the audience in on who the Terminator is, and kind of go from there of, you're kind of in a guessing game of like, who is the monster? It could be any of us.
All right. So there's lots of discussion around AI technology, especially the last few years. Was that something that you thought of, or something that influenced you while you were writing the story, specifically around writing Kokoro?
Yeah, it's funny. I hope when people watch the show 2 weeks from now, I hope that they don't look at those scenes and go, this feels like it was written 4 years ago. Like, I hope that it feels of today. AI is developing so quickly. And, I think back to a year ago where we were all kind of laughing at the fact that it couldn't figure out how many fingers we have. And now on a regular basis, I'm looking at Instagram posts and going, I don't know if I'm looking at a person. I genuinely am not sure, and I'm pretty good at being able to just kind of look at an image and see if it's been edited, and now that's starting to go away. Unfortunately, it's something that is extremely relevant, and it's relevant in a kind of the fear of the apocalypse way, but it is also relevant in Hollywood had a writer's strike last year, and one of the big items was the role that AI is going to play in the relationship between writers and studios and, a machine writing movies and television. My own personal philosophy, I didn't want to do a show, a story that is just computers bad, technology bad, Terminator's evil, because you get past the first movie, and it's part of the reason why the second movie is so divine, because you have the face of the villain in the first movie, and that's the hero. That's the guy who's there to save the kid. And so instantly this idea of, well, machines are all bad, it goes out the window, because that's one of the most emotional relationships in the franchise. And so for me, it felt important to go, yes, there are a lot of ways in which AI is definitely bad and is definitely not helping us. And I think that there's a great moment in T2 when they're stopped at a gas station, and they're watching the Terminator, and John Connor are watching these two kids play with squirt guns and just saying, "You're dead, you're dead, you're dead." And John Connor looks at these kids and just goes, "We're not going to make it, are we?" And the Terminator says, "It's in your nature to destroy yourselves." That for me is everything. Like, that's what this is really about. And I can apply the same thing to AI, where here, yeah, great. Like, you can all get on Midjourney and like replace all of my artist friends who work at DC Comics. Like, fucking congratulations. But at the same time, there's a lot of bad things that could be done with this. There's probably some good too. And I think that the creation for me of that character, Kokoro, is kind of the version, Malcolm Lee as a character, he believes that there's a good side to this. And I believe that too. And I think that that good side, it's not all good in the same way that the bad is not all bad. It's nuanced, it's gray, it's in degrees, and that makes it hard to talk about. But fortunately, Netflix gave me 8 episodes to talk about it. So hopefully I've said something articulate.